Hello beautiful people and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Zekhethelo. Please do not forget to like, subscribe and definitely turn on your notifications. To my loyal subscribers, thank you so much for being here again and entrusting me on this magical journey. This week's video, I'll be tackling stage 2 of the design stage. So if you are new here, please make sure you watch my stage 1 video and I'll put the link in my bio. And for those of you already up to date, let's get to it. Stage 2 is one of my favorite stages. It's the stage where you can dream anything and imagine anything and just have fun with the design. As I've mentioned before, stage 1 was the brief and getting to know the client and their needs. And stage 2, now we understand the client and now we're getting into the design process. So I'm just going to briefly cover what we do in stage 2 and I'll be using my case study, my bedroom again to just show you guys the processes that we go through. The first thing that we look at is space planning, and that's reimagining the space to its new form. Number 2, we will propose materials. Sometimes in this stage, it's not like actually saying that this is the exact material using. 3 is the technicality and functionality of the design elements. So it's not only conceptualizing these things, but also assigning certain functions to these design elements, as well as starting to think about its technicality. How are you going to detail this? 4 is reviewing the budget, and this is something that's constantly in the back of our heads. Then 5 is reviewing the project program. Before we get into my bedroom, I think it's just a good time to mention that there are different scales and scopes to renovation. This was a very minor renovation. It was quite an aesthetic layer. So it didn't require me to completely gut down things, and I didn't move my bathroom, for instance, to the other side of the bedroom. However, you'll see how I managed to transform the space. In my videos, you'll also see the flip side of that, where clients really want you to gut the entire space and just leave the external intact. And that's also a lot of fun. You're erecting walls wherever you see fit, and just really changing up the space to suit what your client really wants. The renovation scale and scope is really dependent on your client, the brief, as well as the budget.
Full disclaimer, I prepared all this content for this video. At the time, because it was my room, I already knew what I wanted and I didn't have to go into such depth in terms of pulling out precedent images. And I also used different software to draw up my space, which I'll show you a little later. So this is just mainly to show you guys the processes that we go through and what those processes look like.
Let's kick off space planning with the existing plan. So I basically will get a plan and I sit with the client. We discuss what things that they like or hate about their space, and I just really get a deeper understanding as to what's really wrong in this current space. And then once I've extrapolated that information from them, I'll go visit the space myself and take a walk through, take photos, and also just get a real feel of the space. And then I'll sit with my plan and then start making my notes and analyzing things that we should definitely change. Looking at my bedroom, I really did not like the fact that I only had one light switch which operated my bathroom and my passage light and my bedroom. It just was very annoying having to run to bed in the dark. So I just want to let you know before I continue that I'm not going to go through all the notes that I have. It's just to show you that there are multiple layers and there are many notes that go in and lots of consideration that happens. I'm just going to highlight the elements that I found were very annoying or that I really wanted to change or upgrade. If we move into the bathroom, I really was annoyed that I had this little bricked up portion next to my toilet. It was a very low portion of brickwork. I would say it was about 300 high or 350 high. I think this brickwork was there to conceal the soil pipe. So this goes back to me mentioning in a previous video how important it is to have interior designers working with the architect or with the engineers from the beginning, because if I were on this job or another interior designer was on this job, for instance, they would not have had this happen. We would have been able to prevent this with all the consultants sitting together and not just have this random pipe now in the middle of my bathroom that they had to conceal. So that was a big no-no for me. The toilet was also very old. It was one of those closed coupled toilets, so I upgraded that, and also just did an upgrade to the general finishes and all the sanitary fittings. And it's also important to note that I didn't change my first fix positions at all. I think I kept them relatively the same. The only area where it changed was in the shower. Now, if we walk into my bedroom a little bit more and we look at the main space, I was getting a new door installed because we were extending our balcony, so I was getting a new balcony, yay. But that meant that my built-in cupboards could no longer sit in the position that they were, and that also compromised the position of my bed. And at the time, I think because I was under so much pressure at work, site was going on, and my mother needed an answer about blocking up the windows that I said that I eventually did block up. I blocked those up in anticipation that I might move some built-in cupboards there. I had no idea what I was going to do with the space, and I was just under fire and under pressure. So I made that unfortunate decision to block up those windows. I also was omitting all my joinery. I wasn't keeping anything. And that meant that I was left with quite an empty space. If you look at the plan, middle or the foot of my bed, at the foot of the bed, there's so much space and it just feels empty and like, you know, such a waste of space. So we'll see how I managed to repurpose that space and make it useful. And then my only light source was from those windows on the right hand side. So I had to keep that in mind. So we don't just analyze the floor plan, we also analyze the ceiling. And in my bedroom, or in most of the house, we actually didn't have any ceilings. We had the exposed soffit. And when we speak about soffits, it's basically the concrete slab above any floor, and the underside is the soffit. I hope that makes sense. But yes, I had exposed soffits and they had this stippled finish, which I really do not like. But the great thing and the upside of having these exposed soffits is that I had very high ceilings or high soffit heights. I think the soffit height was around 3.2 meters high from the finished floor, which is great. So when we analyze the ceiling, we look at the existing first fix points that are there. Because this was an exposed soffit, only solution to getting in more lighting was to put in some ceilings. So for instance, I only had one light source in my bathroom, which obviously meant that that area was extremely dim. And also I have to note the structural elements. I had a downstand beam just above my toilet, which meant I had this ugly block of cement just jutting out in the space. And it just was awful. I had to come up with a solution to either conceal it or highlight it or just make it something interesting and not just like a structural element. Again, I only had one light fitting in my main bedroom, and that meant obviously very poor lighting. I was relying on like my lamps and everything for additional lights. And again, in this space, there's also that issue of that downstand beam that runs the perimeter of my bedroom. Okay, so I've done a quick few 3Ds of what my existing bedroom looked like. I unfortunately do not have any photos. I don't know if it's because I was like, you know, I don't want to see this room ever again. It's like a distant memory. And I think at the time I was really into like Victorian kind of designs. So you'll see I have an image up of my duvet cover. I found something on the internet which is pretty much spot on. It's like this paisley Victorian print, and it was black and white. I was a little bit, I wouldn't say goth, but I was a bit deep. As a teenager, I think we all went through that phase of being a little bit rebellious and being a know-it-all. I loved red. I was obsessed with red. So I had one wall behind my bed splashed in this red. And then the rest of the space was quite neutral, lots of whites. And I had accents of black. I was really into my black, red, and white. Very weird and very different now. I'm glad I've grown up from that. So yeah, these 3Ds just show you spatially how everything was orientated. Everything was pretty much on the perimeter. There wasn't really a great flow of space, and there was just that empty hole at the foot of my bed. Before we get into the precedents that actually influenced my bedroom, I'm going to show you a few images of basically what I wanted initially. I wanted a very pink space. I love pink, and I still do to this day. And I'm just going to flip through these images. So I wanted a lot of pink elements. I wanted this very opulent and grand space. And I really had to remember that at the end of the day, I'm only in Durban twice a year, if even. Like these days, it's more like once a year. So I wasn't the end user anymore. My parents' guests were. So I didn't want to have this all pink, girly room. I just wanted it to be more of a zen and neutral and natural space. We'll see how I switched up this approach in my Precedents. Let's start off by looking at a few precedents for the ensuite. So in these two images, I really enjoyed the long, narrow window, and I loved the relationship between the vanity and this window. I also just loved how the vanity went from wall to wall and oversailed this window beautifully. I also like the round mirror referenced in the image below, and I just like how it's in this very geometric space. So it's just a nice like juxtaposition. If we're looking at tones, I just enjoyed the natural and neutral tones in this image. I thought that I would really love to use like an oak timber drawer with a Korean white integrated basin. With the ceiling heights, I thought the LED is a great way to break up the detail of a normal bulkhead. So I thought it would be a great way to introduce quite ambient lighting and an interesting way to break up the different ceiling heights. With this image, I just really focused on the idea of having a niche in my bathroom so I wouldn't have to have those annoying glass shelves. And I also just loved the movement in the stone, and I would look for a tile that has a similar kind of movement. In this image, I would also just reference the minimal finishes used, and I really wanted my space to be quite neutral and very calming and zen. So I wouldn't use a lot of finishes and lots of different colors. And lastly, I just wanted a very simple and frameless shower screen. I didn't want anything fussy. I didn't want it to look chunky or clunky. I really wanted a feature in my bedroom, so I decided that I wanted to clad one of the walls, and I thought the best opportunity was the bathroom door. Since I didn't have a bathroom door and I wanted a bit of privacy, I thought that I should treat that wall and door as one. So I really love this image, and it depicts exactly what I was intending to do. I just love how the door is concealed away and it just looks like the wall. And I really loved the groove detail, just adds a little bit of elegance, and it's very simple. And I also love the pop of color. Like I love color, and I just had to have color somewhere. So this door wouldn't be a normal hinge door. It definitely had to be a sliding door, and the sliding door would be ceiling hung. I didn't want to see any tracks. I'm all about the minimal look, and it's simple and non-fuss. I definitely did not want to do anything that would mean that I would have to have the track exposed. When I was looking at my bedroom, like I've mentioned before in the existing plan, I lost a door and a window. So my built-in cupboards couldn't be in the old position that they were, and I also just hated that empty space. So I decided that, the best way to have my built-in cupboards and my bedroom was to create this dressing room. So I pushed my bed into the center of my bedroom, and I just played with the idea of a dressing room. So I looked at having a tall headboard, and after playing around with this idea, I thought, okay, because there isn't much light, I only have one light source, I definitely want to have a lower headboard and something that's upholstered and soft. So I took it a step further, and I was like, why not have it dual purpose? Why not make it a bit more practical and functional, and have it as a place where I can put my hand back down or put a beautiful vase on there or some candles. And I also just love this image because of the LED lighting, just creating that ambient lighting just before you go to bed. I think it's just such a beautiful and sexy detail in a bedroom. So you'll see as we discuss the proposed plan how all of this kind of happened spatially. And then, of course, I had to have a vanity, have to do my makeup somewhere. So I thought that this place would be very simple. I would have a very thin floating element, and again with the round mirror just to break from the geometry. And I also dabbled with the idea of having wall lights just to add that layer of elegance and sophistication. This is very important to me. The curtain recesses, I wanted curtain recesses. I didn't want to see any of my tracks. And with that, I also wanted to introduce, again, some more ambient lighting, a little bit of LED, just to have a beautiful and soft glow on the curtains. Okay, so now we've gone through all the precedents that I used. And I think it's important to mention at this stage that for me, these stages are merely guidelines. I mean, we definitely follow them to the T, but they are guidelines. That doesn't mean that in stage 3, if you haven't thought of something, you can't develop that design or thought, then you can. Like, I definitely work very fluidly, and you'll see in some instances, certain things have developed further along than others. Other things, I'm more like spatially placing things. So this is why I love stage 2 so much, because I'm mainly just playing with the ideas that are in my head. And even though I'm still playing around, I always consider the functionality and the technical aspect of it. I think it's so important to design with the end goal in mind. And what I mean by that is, it's all good and well to have these creative ideas and amazing designs, but if you do not know how to execute them or do not know how to detail them, good luck, because it's so disheartening to show a client something and you haven't figured out if it's going to be viable and if you can actually even get this done in South Africa, for instance. So you should always try and do your research up front before you present to clients and make sure that you haven't figured it all out, but you know that it's 80% are sure that you can get this constructed. And one last thing to mention before we get into the proposed plan, you'll see that it is quite diagrammatic. Some things are just blocks at the moment. It's just showing you and showing myself, or the client, who is myself. So it's basically showing me that I have considered where I'll put like built-in cupboards, where I'll put a vanity, and so on. And think about architecture, it's basically like massing. So I've always had an issue with privacy before. Yes, I know it's a bedroom and there was that main door, but I really enjoy a lot of privacy. I always knew that I wanted to have a door, and like I mentioned in the precedent, that this was going to be a feature door, and then I took that further and made it into a feature wall. I really didn't like the shower seat. It's just my preference. I know a lot of people do like shower seats. So I decided we're gonna demolish it. And luckily enough, my sisters were also redoing their bathroom. So I got to steal a bit of space from their bathroom to make sure that my shower cubicle was bigger. I also explored with the idea of making that existing window longer and extending that basin and oversailing it over that window like my reference images. Then my solution to the old toilet that I didn't like and concealing that brickwork that was already concealing a soil pipe was a new brick skin. I needed that new brick skin to house the cistern for my wall hang toilet. This wasn't only just functional in terms of housing the cistern, it also was a great place for me to create a little ledge to put candles or any other kind of decor items. Okay, now we walk into my bedroom and you'll see that I've changed it up quite a bit. I went for that dressing room idea. I kept the built-in cupboards against the wall, and then my headboard became sort of a division for my dressing room. I decided to keep that headboard low so that I could get as much natural light into my new dressing room. I love natural light and I'm not a huge fan of artificial light. So that was the best solution in optimizing this natural light. Having pushed my bed into the middle of the space, I also was confronted with a few issues. At the time of me redesigning the space, my parents had already upgraded all the floors in our bedroom. So I felt bad to ask them to rip up the floors and run conduits in the concrete slab to get power into my headboard. So I just had to make do, unfortunately, without any power in my headboard. However, I did manage to get some lighting for my LED, and you'll see as we progress through these videos how that turned out. Again, pushing my bed to the middle of my room really answered my question of this empty space. It no longer felt empty anymore, and it also just allowed a better movement of space. Loved how I could walk through my dressing straight out into my balcony, and I had easy access from my bed from the left and the right. Decided that I wanted to have 2 different ceiling heights, and those decisions were actually decided for me because of the downstand beams. It meant that I had to drop my ceilings quite low down, and because, like I mentioned before, we had very high soffits, I also wanted to maximize on the height of those soffits. I had to play with getting away with using the lower ceilings in isolated cases, and then playing with volume in places that I really wanted to have a lot of volume. You'll see the green hatch is basically just the lower portion of the ceiling, and that is just mainly in the entrance and my bathroom. That low portion of the ceiling had to be low because that downstand beam above my toilet was much lower than the downstand beams in my bathroom. I kept the ceiling height in my shower cubicle higher. I just liked having the sense of space while I'm showering. And I was also considering doing the LED detail between these 2 ceiling heights. And I was so lucky that my walls aligned, and I love it when things just like align and work out, because that meant that I could start a new ceiling height at that position and not have like weird kinks and all of that. This was like the perfect place to introduce a different ceiling height. And again, I was also considering an LED detail. I love ambient lighting. In my bedroom, the ceiling height was the same height as the shower cubicle, so it was much higher. It was closer to the soffit, which meant I didn't lose too much volume in my space, and it just makes a space feel more luxurious and opulent because you have all this depth to it. So that basically wraps up the proposal. I'm just going to show you a few 3Ds of the proposed space. Like I said, it's very diagrammatic. I've put in loose furniture here and there. You see my vanity in the background with the floating desk and a round mirror, actually similar to the one behind me. And if we look at the 3D perspective of my proposed bathroom, you'll see that I've also just diagrammatically shown that there will be a frameless glass screen. I mean, there's not a door or anything at the moment. It's still purely diagrammatic. Those layers will come later. And you'll see the niche that I wanted to propose, that ledge that extends from the one end all the way to the wall with the connection with the window. So already you can see that it's starting to take some sort of form and shape. So that basically wraps up stage 2 of the design process. Obviously, budget is still very important, and at that time, I don't think I was thinking budget. I was just like, what do I love? Just throw it out there. Let's projectile vomit everything that I want out there. And that's basically what I did. And you'll see what the implications of me not being budget conscious, what it meant later. And in terms of project program, I think I've touched on that like here and there, that I had to like quickly make decisions, which meant that I made bad decisions, but that's okay. I've learned from it and I still got a pretty decent room out of it. That basically covers everything in stage 2. I hope that was very informative to you guys. I hope it's starting to get exciting to actually see a project from its inception to the completion. We're only on stage 2. There is still stage 3 to go. Actually, we'll see very, very soon. I'll be releasing these videos every second Sunday. So if this is very interesting to you, then definitely keep tuned every second Sunday, but also keep tuned on other Sundays. And that concludes this video. I'm not going to talk on any longer. Thank you so much for being here. Please like, please subscribe, and turn on notifications. I will see you next week. Bye. Okay, I'm just going to insert this clip in somewhere because I completely forgot. But I really do want to do a Q&A where you guys ask me any questions regarding the career as an interior designer. Studying to be an interior designer, I'm going to try and remember things from 5 years ago. But I have realized that I do have quite a few students who are following me, so it would be great to hear from you guys, and also just anybody. Just ask me any questions and I would love to do a Q&A series, possibly in about 3 weeks time or so, around there, or a month's time. So definitely put your questions in my comment section in any of my videos. If you follow me on Instagram, please send me a DM with your questions and I'll definitely be answering them soon. Bye.